Before I get into the main topic, I just wanted to make a quick apology. I forgot to put the Hurley CD in the last video. I know, it's a national travesty, but I have a solution to make sure something like this never happens again. There we go. Now we can never escape. Anyway, hey everyone, and welcome back to the music charts. The saddest place on this entire planet. Today we'll be talking about greed. I'm glad I'm not a Swiftie because I'd be broke right now. Last year, I made a video detailing several examples of music artists releasing several distinct versions of the same albums in order to drive up sales, and in part, taking advantage of their fans. This included selling multiple cassettes that form a picture if you buy them all, including random photo cards with each copy to get fans to collect them, and straight up printing collect them all on the packaging so they can form whatever this is. And without a doubt, the biggest perpetrator of this practice, at least here in the States, is none other than Miss Taylor Allison Swift. And in the 10 months since I posted the original video, which I don't recommend watching, it wasn't well written, I can officially say that Swift isn't nearly as bad as she was back then. She's even worse. In this video, I'm going to go over the most recent album cycle from Taylor Swift, and how her and her team are not only taking advantage of her fans, but also screwing over the music industry as a whole. But before we get any further into this video, I just want to make a few things clear. First of all, I am not a Taylor Swift hater. I do enjoy some of her stuff, and even when I don't, I still understand why she has the global impact that she does. Secondly, this isn't meant to be an attack on Taylor's music, and especially not her fans. Even if you do choose to buy every variant of the same album, if it's your own money, you are well within your right to do whatever you want with it. Unless you're a scalper, you piece of shit. And finally, this video is not going to be a full analysis on Taylor Swift as a person. That would be exhausting. This is just meant to be a criticism of Taylor Swift and her team, and the tactics they use to sell albums and keep her at the top. So without further ado, let's begin. Our story begins in the same place where most pathetic stories begin. The Grammys. On the same night when Killer Mike won an award, then immediately got arrested, as well as when the members of Boy Genius finally won a fucking Grammy. 3 years too late, but we'll take it. Taylor Swift was nominated for and won Best Pop Vocal Album of the Year, and while accepting the award, she took the opportunity to make an announcement.
My brand new album comes out April 19th. It's called The Tortured Poets Department.
I'm going to refrain from making a joke about that title, but okay, that's all we really need to know about the Grammys. Let's just move on. Oh, no. We're not talking about any of that today. Let's just move on. Within minutes of the announcement, pre-orders for the album went up on Taylor's website. These standard copies were titled the Manuscript Edition, which pretty much entailed that there would be more variants to come. Also, side note, but Taylor once again chose to not release any singles before the release, which yeah, could be a nice way to build intrigue and excitement, but if no one knew what this was going to sound like beforehand, why would you even sell it? This could have been a polka album and nobody would have known beforehand. Anyways, my beef with pre-order culture aside, this was all pretty standard for Taylor at this point. We now had the standard edition of the album, and now all we had to do was wait for the inevitable. Oh yeah. Then throughout the next month or so, we'd get announcements of the Bolter edition on February 16th, the Albatross edition on the 23rd, and the Black Dog edition on March 3rd, which is the first time I've seen a black vinyl record being advertised as a special edition. I really hope the Swifties who bought all of these have a stable income. It's also worth noting that all three of these variants were marketed as exclusive to the Taylor Swift web store for 72 hours only, which is f***ing hilarious in hindsight, but we'll get to that later. This was now the fourth time that Taylor marketed several editions of the same album, and if you're at all familiar with this strategy, a pattern was beginning to form. Other than Folklore in 2020, all of these album releases had some sort of incentive to buy every variant. 1989, Taylor's version featured back covers that formed whatever this is. And the variants from Midnight's all featured back covers that made a clock. Sure.
It's a clock, it makes a clock.
But this time around, the covers didn't seem to have any patterns on them, so maybe that means that Taylor and her team finally cleaned up their act a little, right? Why do you think I'm making this video? Instead of just featuring a few cosmetic differences like her previous albums, each of these editions would include an exclusive bonus track. You know, it's one thing to entice fans to buy multiple copies to make a clock with 4 barcodes on it, but it's a completely different thing to lock music to certain editions. And of course, if you wanted to hear all 4 of these songs legally, you would have to buy all 4 editions. Capitalism. And yes, all of these songs would be available on the Anthology album, which came out the same day, but keep in mind, nobody knew that was a thing until 2 hours after the main album had already come out. Oh yeah, I guess that counts as a variant too. We'd get another variant exclusive to Target later on as well, but since the bonus track was the same as the standard version, I'm not going to count it toward the grand total. They also became available to order at independent record stores for an inflated price, which is another conversation that's also worth having. Oh yeah, and those 3 website exclusives that were only available for 3 days, they come back. Multiple times, actually. They were also available at indie record stores on the day of release as well. I would act surprised, but this is the 3rd time this has happened. So yeah, that was everything from the reveal to the release of the Tortured Poets department. And that would normally be the end of our story. The album would be out, and would do just as well as any other Taylor Swift album. However, this, my friends, is only the beginning of the story. Had this been left alone, it would have already been pretty bad, but somehow Taylor and her team have managed to make this even worse, sadder, and even more pathetic than before. Unless you've been avoiding mainstream music at all costs, you'll know that 2024 has been a pretty stacked year for pop music. Before Taylor even released her album, we've had the likes of Beyoncé, Ariana Grande, and several others drop albums that have done pretty well commercially. And of course, after Taylor's album released, there were plenty more heavy hitters to come. But even with those, the Tortured Poets department has managed to stay at the top of the Billboard Hot 200 since it debuted on the charts. Okay, well that's not too surprising, considering who we're talking about. This must have happened based only on name and replay value, right? Probably not. Instead of banking on continued success, or, you know, being gracious to others, Taylor and her team have gone full chaotic evil and have released even more variants. This would all start on the 8th of May with a CD that featured, you guessed it, another bonus track. Instead of featuring a new song or something from the Anthology album, which by the way, still didn't have a physical release, it featured an acoustic version of a song from the main album. Get used to hearing that a lot. A week later on the 16th, Taylor decided to release not 1, not 2, but 3 different variants on the same day. And these weren't even physical releases either. These were digital-only releases that featured exclusive voice memos. Voice memos. She could have released one version with all 3 voice memos, but if you wanted to hear them all, you'd have to buy all 3. 1 week later on the 23rd, she would once again release 3 more digital copies, this time including live recordings of songs. Better than voice memos, I'll give her that. And finally, as of now, we get 2 CD variants on June 1st, and 2 more CDs on the 10th, all featuring acoustic versions of previously released songs. So now, as of late June 2024, there have been 16 different variants of the Tortured Poets department, 11 of which releasing after the main album had already come out. And counting. Plus, all of these recent ones were only available between 6 and 48 hours, which pretty much preyed on people with the fear of missing out. And of course, the reason for all these variants was to keep Taylor at the top of the Billboard Hot 200, blocking artists like Dua Lipa and Billie Eilish from taking the #1 spot. And if you don't believe me, the entire reason I decided to make this video was because of something that happened earlier this month. On June 7th, Charli XCX released her newest album, Brat. A very good album despite the cover. This was mostly loved by critics and audiences alike. So much so that it was expected to debut at #1 on the UK album charts. Do you see where I'm going here? Taylor Swift recycled the voice memo variants and released them only in the UK, a day before the charts stopped counting for the week.
I need it!
And what do you know? Taylor maintained the #1 spot. I know this all seems like elitist bullshit that has zero impact on anything important, which it is, but you can't tell me this was unintentional. The moment she saw her spot being threatened, not even in her home country, she decided to cheat her way back in just because she knew she could. And listen, my point in making this video isn't to make Taylor Swift look like a villain, as hard as that might be, because even for the other artists I've mentioned, other than using recycled materials, they aren't doing much to help the variant problem. I'm just trying to point out how visibly shady artists like Taylor are whenever they pull crap like this off. And while you could make the argument that the fans who bought these variants are the main problem here, let's take a look at the posts that announced these variants. These posts are flooded with comments that are violently against these practices. Even her most devoted fans are against these tactics, and are begging for the aforementioned Anthology album to get a physical release. And for all of that, plus with how Taylor seems to be allergic to the word Gaza, her and her team's response has been nothing. Buy my new variant! So, moral of the story is, don't meet your heroes. Kind of a sad way to end things. And like I said earlier, I'm not trying to insinuate that you're a bad person for liking Taylor Swift, or even if you bought every variant of this album. I just want people to be aware that the system is absolutely being abused through this, and I don't want them to fall for it just because they're limited. And while I'm all for supporting your favorite artists as much as you can, Taylor Swift of all people does not need that much money. And before I end things off, you may have noticed that I changed the name of this channel recently. Took me long enough. Muted7017 just wasn't an eye-catching name, plus if I just changed it to Muted, I don't think it would stand out well. Plus I did want to get my name more involved too, because I didn't just want to be a face without a name, if that makes any sense. So if this isn't your first time watching, or even if it is and you didn't know my name, hi, my name is Nick, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. Fun fact, I was planning on releasing this video in July, but then the video game that this video was going to be about had an update announced, like a year and a half after the last major update. So now I'm going to go sit in that corner and impatiently wait for this update to come out so I can finally make this damn video. But before then, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.